Edwards, and you're listening to Authentic Leadership, a series of conversations, insights and inspirations with leaders who are real, raw and authentic. Today I bring you an open and heartwarming conversation with Toni Powell, wellbeing wonder worker, gratitude expert and self-confessed worrywart. Our conversation focuses on the power of gratitude, what life was like for Toni before she discovered gratitude, and why it's an essential leadership capability. Enjoy. I met Toni many years ago as we were both members of a professional speakers group, and it really has been my privilege to watch her career flourish, especially in the field of positive psychology and with happy, healthy programs. Toni is on a mission to bring happiness into the workplace, and from a really down-to-earth, highly practical perspective. She is a very entertaining keynote speaker, author, and all-round jolly good egg. Oh, and did I mention that she's a global expert on gratitude? And that's our topic in conversation today. Toni, welcome to Authentic Leadership.
Thanks, Claire. It's great to hear.
Okay, so, as I read out that introduction, it sounds like you have the perfect life. You've got it all, and maybe you sailed through it unscathed, but I suspect that's probably not the reality. To get to where you are now, I'm assuming you've had your fair share of challenges. And so my question is, what were some of those really key bumps in the road that led you to be such an advocate, so passionate about the power of gratitude?
Well, it was definitely the major problem for me was winding up in my early 50s depressed and quite suicidal because a whole lot of things had gone wrong in my life. And I discovered I just didn't have the skills you need to handle those things. And it was going on a bit of an exploration, trying to find a solution to being depressed that wasn't more drugs, that I discovered gratitude. And then because it worked so rapidly and so it was so easy, I'm not someone who's very disciplined. I'm not someone who sticks to things for a long time. And to find something that I could do that worked for me, that was fairly rapid, was so eye-opening and so exciting that it led me to discover a whole range of things that work well for emotional well-being.
Wow. And so when it came to your search and all the things that you were doing, why gratitude? What was it about gratitude that worked for you?
Well, initially when I tried gratitude, it didn't work for me.
Thank you for your honesty.
Because my daughter had a photographic gratitude project that was going called 365 Grateful. And so she was doing all this gratitude. So I came across gratitude and I got given a gratitude journal. So I started dutifully trying to write in it. But I was so miserable, I couldn't think of things I was grateful for. And so I'd lose momentum really quickly, like in a day or two. I wouldn't continue for very long at all. And I could see that it should work, but I really couldn't get it to work. It wasn't until I started really looking into gratitude that I realized that it isn't the circumstance that is happening that needs to be happy or beautiful or suiting me for me to be grateful. It's not the circumstance making me feel grateful. It is my decision to be grateful that is making the circumstance happy. And once I started to understand that it wasn't a feeling I kept waiting for a feeling. I should have this nice feeling. It was deciding to choose to be grateful regardless of having a feeling that fought the feelings, which I know sounds crazy.
Wow. No, it makes absolute sense. So how did you consciously make that decision? What was going on at the time? What flipped the switch?
The thing that flipped the switch was going and doing a bit of a course about how my brain worked and realizing how patterns of thinking and default thinking were probably a bigger part of my problem than I realized, and that I could take control of how my thinking went. Discovering that was incredible. I felt like I had gone from being afflicted by something I couldn't help, depression, to having control over the outcomes of how I responded in a circumstance. And gratitude was kind of the fast path to that.
Okay, so we've got something that doesn't need drugs,
No,
that is science-based.
we're super science based. It's so super. There's so much science. There's 40, 50 years of science. It's not just a recent little thing. There's such solid evidence about gratitude.
So, Toni, okay, so what I'm hearing from you is this is a practice that costs no money, that is drug-free, that is heavily science-based. And I'm a massive advocate of gratitude as well. So I mean, if it's such a no-brainer, why on earth isn't it being prescribed for depression? Do GPs know about it? I mean, I hadn't planned to ask you this question, but it's just one that I'm really curious about.
Well, this is exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing, because after the practice of gratitude worked quite dramatically for me, I then I began thinking, well, if it could work for me, could it work for other people? So that's when I started the research, thinking, this just feels a bit too easy. Everyone would know about it if it was this easy. And so I thought, well, it can't be this easy. That's why I started looking into it. I started thinking that, maybe I'd had some kind of manic episode where I'd gone from one feeling to the other.
An epiphany.
And that it was just an aberration. Yeah, some weird thing. I didn't realize initially the science behind it. Once I began to look into the science and understand the mechanics of it all, then it just makes perfect sense. And that is why I do what I do, because the fact it isn't taught in school, the fact that it isn't prescribed at your GP or your psychologist, it amazes me. One of the very first workshops I did in early 2012, a psychologist came along to it, and she came up to me at morning tea and said, we prescribe gratitude in our practice, and we've discovered that those people with depression who take on the practice of gratitude and commit to it get better. Those who don't. And I said, what? And I said, this is in a practice. You are seeing this regularly. Are you sure enough about this to get up in front of, and there were 200 people there, get in front of these people and tell them that? And she did. She got up and said, this is what we find.
Wow.
If people are prescribed gratitude and they do it, they get better.
Gosh.
And that's been my experience. I'm not saying at all that you never have bad days. I'm not saying I don't wake up thinking, oh my goodness, I hope it all burns down in a minute. This is a very difficult world some days. But gratitude's just an instant way to reset, and you can use it anytime, anywhere. Take it with you. It doesn't run away. It doesn't take off with a younger person. It isn't subject to financial crisis. Don't have to win the lottery to get 25% happier. It's just this wonderful thing that a kid from 8 years old can do. And it can transform the brain of someone 8 years old and someone 80 years old.
So when we talk about a practice of gratitude, I know for a lot of people it's like, well, so I'm just going to get a book and say, I'm grateful for my health, I'm grateful for my family, I'm grateful for my friends. And it's way more than that. How would you address that sort of skepticism or cynicism around it's just about write down 3 things that you're grateful for and someone's going to wave a magic wand and you'll be happy forever after?
Yeah, no, it doesn't work like that. And certainly writing down, I think gratitude is a more complex thing than people give it credit for. I think people confuse appreciation with gratitude.
Ah,
And I think a part of appreciation, I think gratitude's made up of a number of things, and appreciation has to be part of it. It's like seeing afresh is part of it. Appreciation is part of it. But the actual process of gratitude is one of giving thanks, not noting, not necessarily just taking a photo or writing something in a
mhm.
journal. It is the communication of thanks. So to me, gratitude's magic happens because it's an outward process.
Right.
You are giving outward thanks to someone else. So it connects you to other people. It improves relationships. It helps people feel seen. It's like an all-round wonder drug.
Yeah. And that actually is a beautiful segue into my next question around gratitude in business and gratitude in organizations. So,
Mm-hmm.
how might you go about helping a leader in an organization to see gratitude as for want of a better word, hard leadership capability?
Yeah. Look, when I first started working with corporates and going into corporates, they'd be telling me, this is a soft thing. And I'd be like, why is this soft? I don't understand your attribution of calling this thing soft. It is a mental discipline that makes you almost invincible. It it to me it is the core of resilience. It makes you tough on so many
Mm-hmm.
levels. To me, it's a really core thing for a leader, because to me, leading is
Yeah,
relationships. That's what you are doing as a leader. You are relating. If people in your organization do not feel seen or valued, they do not
yeah.
stay. So in terms of keeping people in your team, keeping people focused in your team, keeping their brains at a premium, keeping their mood stable, keeping them in a place where they don't fall victim to stress easily, or if they do, there's a way out very
Mm-hmm.
quickly. All those sort of things, to me, are very core basics that any business wants as a
Yeah.
standard. And so to me, this is the gift of gratitude. It supplies all that for you in one easy thing. And I love to see my approach with working with leaders is not to teach them about gratitude so they can kind of practice it on others, so much as they can experience the inner transformation
Mm.
themselves, which then changes how they lead.
And what sort of changes have you observed? What sort of difference is it making
In myself or in other
in the
leaders,
people
or
that you've worked
what?
with? And I know you work with a lot of people in education as well. So, what are some of your success stories?
Oh my goodness, so many. We early on, a woman turned up to a workshop with a late, and they came in and they sat in the front row because all the other seats were taken, and she had a very very big husband with her, a very tall and big man, but also big in the sense of personality
Mm-hmm.
and mood. And he came in clearly unhappy, didn't want to be there. He'd clearly been dragged in there. And I later heard their story. So he had been in very senior leadership and had whistle blown at his
Ah,
workplace. And as happens with many whistleblowers, everything comes back at them,
yeah.
and they end up losing their job. And so he ended up devastated. He lost his career. He retreated into himself, became very depressed and suicidal, ate and ate and ate, became very overweight. to the point where his wife had to call home 6 or 7 times a day to check he hadn't killed
Oh,
himself.
gosh.
And that was tearing her apart and really impacting their marriage. She was at the end of the marriage, and she basically said to him, "Come to this thing. This is the last chance." Anyway, so when he came in, he was like so fiery and unhappy, and I was thinking, well, he's going to derail the whole workshop. He's so mad. Anyway, he sat there and he listened, and I found out later he was on, I think, 4 different lots of antidepressants.
Gosh.
Anyway, at the end of the day, when it was a day just on gratitude, at the end of the day, he said, like, I am going to commit to this. Over the next 6 months, he lost all his extra weight. He went off all 4 drugs, and that was 2012. He's still well and off all medication and thriving. A few weeks after the workshop, he got in his little sports car and drove up just to thank me personally, because his life had changed so dramatically in a very short time.
Wow.
And remains changed. And he's gone back he went then into mentoring troubled teens. So he used his experience to then lead others into a better place.
Gosh, if that's the only change you made, then everything's been worth it. And I would imagine that there's a ripple effect.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So many people I know have changed business or opened a different business, and they spend a lot of their time with their clients talking about gratitude. That it becomes something you want to share with people because it's so easily transformative.
So how might you go about helping someone who, I suppose, a little bit like you were, that just they can't see something to be grateful for? Things are just not going their way. Maybe they've struggled through the pandemic. How might we help someone wake up to the power of gratitude?
I think that is quite difficult unless someone is searching and wants to know and is questioning. But, it's not something you can say, you really need to be grateful. I know when I first was starting, I was trying to look around and find something, and I couldn't find anything to be grateful for. If you're deeply depressed, you can't see anything. But once I learned how my brain worked, and I saw that simply focusing on something pleasing, even if it wasn't instantly pleasing to you right then, but something that you knew you did like maybe in the past, that simply a focus on that will start change in your brain. Pretty much everything you do changes your brain. You've just got to work out what ones are going to change it for good. And so for me, the very first thing I could find, which was like a deliberate choice, I'm going to now find something that I can focus on for a minute, was a colour. I just decided I would focus on that colour. So I found it difficult at first, and I had to just do it in 1 minute intervals with something that had once pleased me. But it was pretty rapid where the feelings started coming themselves.
So that's like a combined mindfulness and gratitude practice?
Well, to begin with, because I wasn't really able to identify things that I was grateful for, I just would focus on something that had some goodness to it in some manner, like the colour was a good colour or whatever. So I just initially started off with...
What was the colour?
It was teal colour. Still one of my favourite colours.
Which is your branding now.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? So I think that as you train your brain to start picking up differences and start looking at things, trying to look at it from a child's point of view, from a new point of view, from a point of view of if I had never opened my eyes before, that sort of thing. Once you start looking for that, then you find what you look for. Whatever you start really focusing on, your brain then brings to your attention, which is why when we get depressed or we get angry or bitter, we tend to stay there because that becomes our focus and our brain feeds us more of that.
Yeah. Just listening to you there, it got me thinking about. So I'm based in Sydney, and we're just sort of slowly coming out of lockdown now, and we went into quite a hard lockdown at the end of June, and it was mandated. And just listening to the language of of our premier, it was mandated that we either couldn't go further than 5 kilometres, or we couldn't go outside of our local government area. And, I could imagine so many people listening to that, and it's, you can't, you mustn't, it's all these mandated orders. And I think for me, that what helped in terms of having a gratitude practice was the ability to reframe this and say, fabulous, I'm going to explore every single square meter of national park or greenery in my local government area. And luckily it's an amalgamated one, so it's quite big. And my goodness, I just found the most amazing things on my doorstep.
Yeah.
So is that, could that be classed as an element of gratitude?
I definitely think that would play into that. Yeah, because you've decided to look at what you have, what you can do, like, and that's perfectly valid. It is how we look at things. We go, oh no, I can only go 5 kilometers, but the truth is, you can go 5 kilometers. You have the gift of freedom for 5 kilometers, which many people didn't get that.
Yeah.
So I think it starts you seeing the world as, wow, I can go 5 kilometers rather than I can't. It really changes how you perceive information.
And so expanding out a little bit now, because I know that, in the sort of the trajectory of your career and growth, you've expanded far beyond gratitude now, the whole sort of spectrum of positive psychology. And I know you're doing a lot of work in the education sector. Can you share some of the programs that you're running there, Toni?
Yes, so it it just was very timely that when COVID hit was also at a time where I was just completing and on putting a whole course together of basically everything I'd learned in these years about changing my mindset and the things that keep me sane. I put them all in one program because I wanted to be able to be available beyond just me delivering it personally. That's very limiting. Um, so I put it in a program at exactly the same time that Avid Australia, who are a department in University of Victoria, requested, did I have a program for female principals? And I was able to adapt the program I had. And so I did a 6-week program with 16 female principals. And I'd been working in schools for years and years and years and had great success in schools. However, this was different. We were just working directly with the leaders. And while I had worked in schools where I'm working directly with one group of leaders, like that, the leaders of the school, a group of 6 or 8 people, I've done that quite a bit. But to do it with a group of only leaders and then watch them go back into their schools and the changes that it made in them personally has been really amazing. And then that was so successful, the Leadership Institute in Western Australia, which is, it serves the Department of Education, the principals and deputies and upcoming leaders in education in Western Australia. So I'm now running some programs with them through the Leadership Institute. And every program we've run with leaders or non-leaders has been profoundly transforming for everyone in it, which is the power of gratitude. It is transformative for people, and it's just really simple and easy, so anyone can do it.
And can you give us just, are there any examples of outcomes from those programs or anecdotes from how those principals are then taking that message back into the schools that they're working in?
The sort of things people are talking to me about. One principal who was nearing the end of her career and had a fairly bad run-in with staff, so she was, facing the end of her career on a down note. What she discovered was she began to understand why things had gone wrong, what she had overlooked in relationships, and and was saying to me at the end, going, if only I'd known this, none of this would have happened. I would have spoken to these people differently. I would have handled everything differently if I'd understood about gratitude. So it was quite profound for her, and she's had a really big change of heart and isn't leaving the profession on a down.
And she's not filled with regret, I hope.
No, yeah. So seeing those sort of things and this sort of training that I do, what I'm aiming for is that people kind of come more to peace inside themselves and learn to handle their own
Yeah.
emotions and defensiveness. And then that calm just spreads through everything and affects their marriages, their relationships with their children, their friends. So it's a wide thing. It does have a huge impact in a workplace, but it does because it has a huge impact on the individual.
Yeah.
So it's not like an external practice that you put on and behave a certain way in a workplace. It's more of an internal change that then impacts the work.
I think you've just hit the nail on the head there, and I've been fortunate enough to be one of the participants on one of your Happy Healthy You programs, and when each week rangers,
Mm-hmm.
and ending up as some of the stuff that people ended up sharing, and you just holding the space for them, and I just the way that you put everything together, and maybe this is a bit of a curveball question, but one of the things that I absolutely loved in this program was your use of short films. So can you tell us how that came about? Because they are so powerful, and I wouldn't have thought to have incorporate them in any of my programs, but they just work.
Yeah, I had the advantage of having been a film festival director, so I'd already seen the power of short film. Um, this all came about because when I moved to a small town in 2003, I got a bit lost. I didn't have any friends or the support system you have when you live somewhere for a long time. We'd lived somewhere 10 years. We had a good support system. We went into no support system. I became very depressed about that and not having friends and not having anything to look forward to. So I decided to make a short film and win a competition, which was outrageous. That was just so crazy. I had no experience. Why would I win? But I determined to go and enter this competition and win. And because I'd had a fascination with short film for some years and filmmaking generally for my whole life. And we did go, to make a long story short, we did win this competition, and the little film just travelled all around the world and screened at 160 film festivals, which suddenly gave me an insight in a much bigger way into the power of short film. And
Yeah.
so I like to incorporate that in my work.
And is it because it's the message is condensed? What is it that makes it so powerful?
I think it depends on the film, but I think, I think short film is often storytelling at its best, where you take a big idea and make
Yeah.
it in a few minutes. So the editing is very tight, and it's a film, so there's imagery which is so powerful. And a well done short film, I think, can impact you forever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's certainly, I mean, when we used to come together each week and you'd invite us to reflect back on the course and what we'd learned and what we'd got from it, everyone just kept coming up with, oh, that film about the dog or the film about the guy in Bermuda, or it was always about the films that just made
Yeah.
you stop and take stock.
Yeah.
And it was like a sprinkling of gratitude. Like you got sprinkled with gratitude dust when you watched them.
That's a good way to put it.
But as you say, it's around that impacts the person first and then ripples out to the employee. It's that ripple effect. And so I suppose coming back to organizations and leaders is, how do you get an organization over the line? How do you help them see the hard, fast value in their people embarking on one of your programs? How do you, I mean, do you have to try and influence and convince, or you share your stories? How do you sprinkle your magic dust to get organizations to embrace this?
Very good question. One, I never talk about gratitude up front. I talk about the outcomes thereafter, because people often have a prejudgment about gratitude of what it is, which is the judgment I used to have, that gratitude is this kind of sweet, feminine, little flowery, sweet, for nice, sweet people, for Pollyanna. It's a Pollyanna little fluffy thing. But that is to completely misapprehend what you're dealing with. This is like tough stuff. This is high level tough stuff. It's mental discipline at its best, and powerful to change people in almost every area of your life. So you get great outcomes. So I just talk about the outcomes of the program, which are what most businesses are looking for. They want increased well-being for their team. They don't want people hyper-reactive and melting down and being not productive because they're too busy being stressed or angry or resentful or complaining, whatever it is they're doing. So they want those different outcomes. That's what they're looking for. Gratitude then creeps in during the program.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it must feel good for you to be going back on stage, because you're just such a good keynote speaker. And going back with our relationship to that amazing TEDx Noosa talk that you did, that I'll put in the show notes. So tell us about what you're going to be speaking about at Happiness and Its Causes in Sydney.
I do not know yet. We haven't discussed the topic.
Oh,
I'm not sure.
I love that.
Did have a plan, but I don't know what it is now.
I love that about you. You're so spontaneous. You'll just, I reckon if they just said, right, can you just talk about something tomorrow? You just get up on stage and deliver gold.
We will see.
Well, I for one have got a ticket, and I can't wait. I'm looking forward to seeing you speak again. How does it feel to? I mean, have you done anything face to face recently, or is it just starting to come back?
I just did my first live talk in a long time, to Carers Queensland, and I was talking about caring for my mum, which I did for 6 years. But my mother had died 4 days before the talk, so it was an extraordinary time and very unusual. So it was kind of beautiful, but extremely sad. So it was an unusual reintroduction to speaking again.
Gosh. Yeah, because I think were you considering recording it, but you went ahead with it live?
I did both. So I did a
Ah,
recording, a video for them in case on the day I didn't know how to predict what I would be like because I'd never
mhm.
lost my mother before, so I didn't know what would happen.
Of course.
But the company wanted me to come and speak if I could, so they left the door open, and so on the day I felt like I could, so I did.
Gosh, kudos to you, Tony. Oh, what a fabulous conversation. So just sort of bringing everything. Yeah.
Because I couldn't attend my mum's funeral because of COVID, it was a bit like um, a replacement for the funeral for me to be able to talk about her.
I didn't know you couldn't attend her funeral. Gosh.
No, so I couldn't attend the funeral or be with her while she was dying. That was awful. But I did get the opportunity to talk about her a few days after she died, so that seemed like a little magic gift from the universe.
And something to be grateful for.
Oh, yeah, I was so grateful for it.
Wow, I don't want to ask you any more questions after that. I think it's come to a very um, poignant full circle, really. Gosh, you never cease to amaze me, Tony Powell. You really do. Um, so what I will do, I'll put links to all the to your website. Is it okay to? Are you on LinkedIn or Instagram, or how do you like people to
Yeah,
connect with
yeah.
you?
I'm I'm not a very good social media user. I'm a social media failure. Um, I just don't get into it a whole lot. So I am on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, but I don't
But don't expect
really
a response.
I don't do a lot. I'll respond to a message definitely, but I don't post lots of stuff or videos of myself or
Well, you're too busy anyway.
photos of myself sunning on the beach or whatever you're meant to do on Instagram. I yeah, I don't quite get to it. So I'm not very fun social media person.
It's all good. It's all good. Look, Tony, I am so grateful for having you in my life. I can't wait to see you again face to face. It's been too long.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you so much for being in conversation, for your vulnerability, for your openness, for your honesty from the get go. It's been a joy.
And it's a joy always to talk to you. You are just like sunshine, and you greatly enrich my life. So very happy to chat to you anytime.
Thank you. Thanks for listening, and we hope that this conversation provided the insights and inspiration you were looking for. Did you know that Authentic Leadership was ranked number 10 in the top 25 Australian leadership podcasts for 2021? You can help us to get to number 1 by heading over to Apple iTunes and giving us a positive rating and writing a short review. It's also the most effective way for us to get the key messages around 21st century leadership out into the community. Go well, stay safe, and keep listening and learning.